The holding bay under the sovereign arena smelled like ammonia, hot metal, and something organic I couldn't identify and didn't want to. Rue didn't seem to mind. She was working the perimeter at the end of her lead, nose 4 centimeters off the floor, tail doing its slow metronome thing. Not excited, just thorough. That was Rue. Thorough. I was holding a clipboard with 17 forms on it, waiting for a window clerk who had gone to find a supervisor because, as she'd explained in translation, a non-combat auxiliary animal companion was not a recognized registration category for the Sovereign Arena's competitive roster. I told her to put it under service animal. She said that category was for medical support only. I told her to put it under K9 handler unit. She said the Sovereign Arena did not recognize the K9 designation. I told her to take her time. She had been gone 11 minutes. Behind me, in the open staging corridor, 4 of Earth's fellow entrants were watching Rue with the specific kind of attention that looks like contempt, but is actually something closer to bewilderment. They were large. The smallest of them had limbs like structural columns, wrapped in layered keratinous plates the color of old bone. The tallest one, I'd seen its designation on the entry board, something galactic standard I won't attempt to spell, had 3 sets of shoulders and a head it had to angle sideways to keep from scraping the ceiling. They had all entered the Sovereign Arena's competitive bracket with documented kill records. The arena ran them on a public board by the main gates. I'd looked at it on my way in. Rue was not on the board. Rue was not on any board. That was the whole problem with the window clerk. One of them, the plate-armored one, the smallest, said something to the others. They made a sound that the translator bead in my ear converted as, "It is examining the floor." "Does it eat debris?" Another sound that the bead rendered as laughter. I didn't look up from the clipboard. Rue glanced at them, decided they weren't relevant, and went back to the floor. She had a job. The floor was interesting. The aliens were not. The window clerk came back with her supervisor, a broader version of herself in a formal sash that indicated I gathered administrative authority over this wing of the facility. He looked at the clipboard. He looked at Rue. He looked at me. He said, through the bead, "The animal is very small." I said, "She's a beagle." He said, "That is a breed designation?" I said, "It is." He said, "And its competitive function in the arena is." "She's not competing," I said. "I am. She's my handler unit companion. She goes where I go." That's what the forms say. If you read page 4. He read page 4. It took a while. The plate-armored alien in the corridor said something else. The bead gave me, "The Earth creature sniffs the ground like a bottom-feeder larva." Rue sat down briefly to scratch her left ear with her back paw, then stood up and resumed the perimeter. The supervisor stamped page 1. He initialed pages 2 through 6. He handed back the clipboard and said they would need to verify the designation on a secondary form and that I should wait in Bay 7. Bay 7 was where they kept the entrants who needed separate staging. I found out why when we got there. The Vorith Pit Beast was in Bay 7. I had read the entry board. I knew what the Vorith was. Undefeated in 11 registered appearances. 6.5 meters at the shoulder in full extension. Classification in the Galactic Registry of Competitive Species. Apex, Category 1. Its handler, a thin being in a sealed pressure suit who never seemed to be at quite the right distance from the animal, always either too close or too far, was standing against the far wall, holding a control interface the size of a small table. The Vorith was not restrained. It filled roughly a third of Bay 7. It was the color of cooled basalt, surface texture like tectonic plates, shifted slightly out of alignment. Its 4 eyes, set in a wide orbital array, the kind that gives you full hemisphere coverage, were tracking everything in the room with the slow, unhurried sweep of something that has never, in its evolutionary history, needed a hurry. The other entrants in the corridor had gone quiet when the doors opened. I walked into Bay 7, found a bench along the wall opposite the handler, sat down, and set the clipboard on my knee. Rue hit the floor and started working. The Vorith tracked her, not the way a predator tracks prey. I want to be precise about that because the distinction matters. Prey tracking is forward body, weight shift, that particular postural compression that says the calculation is already running. This was different. The Vortha's weight stayed neutral. Its four eyes followed Rue's path across the floor. The slow trot, the nose working the join between the bay's floor panels, the unhurried left-right sweep, and the animal went very, very still. Rue reached the midpoint of the bay. She sat down. No reason I could see. The floor smelled interesting at that point, or not interesting enough, or she had completed that section to her satisfaction. She sat, tail slow, ears at rest. She looked at nothing in particular. The Vorith looked at her. 11 seconds passed. I counted because I had learned over the years that it's useful to count these things. 11 seconds is a long time when nothing is moving in a room. Then the Vorith took one step back. Not a step away in the way a spooked animal steps away. No body drop, no flinch. A considered step, deliberate repositioning. The kind of movement that says, I have assessed the geometry of this room and I am choosing a different position in it. The handler against the wall made a small adjustment to his interface and then did not touch it again. Rue scratched her ear again, stood up, came back to me, put her chin on my knee, and exhaled through her nose in that long, slow way that meant she was satisfied with the floor and was ready to be somewhere else. I gave her the hand signal for good work. She wagged twice and lay down on my boot. The Vorith did not move again. Its four-hemisphere gaze had settled somewhere in the middle distance. Not on Rue, not on me, not on the handler, not on anything in the room. It was doing what very large things sometimes do when they have encountered something they need to process. It was thinking. We waited 40 minutes for the secondary form. During that time, the Vorth's handler made 2 calls on his communication equipment and spent a long time looking at the control interface without touching it. The Vorth stayed where it was weight neutral, gaze distant. When the secondary form arrived and I signed it and got my arena credentials stamped, I clipped Rue's lead and stood up. Rue stood with me, shook herself once, and looked at the door. I looked at the Vorith. The Vorith looked at Rue. Rue didn't look at the Vorith. She was already interested in the door. We left. I found out 2 days later, when the updated entry board went live at the main gates, that the Vorith's registration had been withdrawn. Formal notification of withdrawal, filed the afternoon of the same day. Reason given, and I had someone translate the specific galactic standard phrasing for me, because I wanted to be accurate about it, was entrant reassessment of competitive field composition. I thought about that for a while. I've been in kennels and handling units for 31 years. I worked with Rue for 9 years before I retired, and 2 more in the Auxiliary Handler Corps when they brought me back for the Interstellar Registration Program. I know what Rue is. The Vorith's handler, apparently, knew what Rue was too. Or rather, the Vorith knew. The handler just read the room. That's the thing about apex animals. They don't posture. They don't negotiate. They look at something, they process it, and they know. The Vorith had spent 11 registered appearances teaching an arena full of Category 1 predators to give it space. It was the most dangerous thing in any room it walked into, until it walked into a room with Rue. Rue, who was 9 years old, weighed 11 kilograms, and had spent her working career with her nose 4 centimeters off the floor. Rue, who didn't look at the Vorith because the Vorith wasn't what she was working on. That's the part that got into the Vorith's processing, I think. Not Rue's history, not her classification. What got in was the posture, the complete and total absence of concern. Rue had walked into a room with the Category 1 undefeated apex predator of the Sovereign Arena and found the floor more interesting. You don't teach an animal not to be afraid of something. Not really, not at that level. What you're actually seeing when you see that absence of concern is the animal telling you what it already knows about itself. The Vorith read it the same way I did. We were in the spaceport waiting area the next morning, Rue asleep on my bag, when one of the plate-armored aliens from the corridor stopped in front of me. It looked at Rue. It looked at me. It said something. The bead gave me. What is its classification? I said Beagle. It stood there for a moment. Then it walked away. I got us 2 seats on the next shuttle home. Rue slept the whole way, chin on my knee, tail doing its slow thing even in her sleep. She'd done her job. The floor was clear.